Welcome home. I'm Dr.Thema, a minister, licensed psychologist, and sacred artist, and this is Homecoming, a podcast to facilitate your journey home to yourself. While I will provide weekly inspiration and mental health tips, this podcast is not a substitute for therapy. I'm so excited you're on the journey. If you want to request specific topics or share your progress, email me at homecomingpodcast@gmail.com. Also, after you listen, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Let's begin. Welcome back, Cojourners. I am glad you're here for another episode of the Homecoming Podcast. And when we started season 2, I invited you all to submit your poems on your homecoming journey. And we have a poem submission for this week from Destiny. And if you have written a poem or written vows to yourself, you can send them to me at homecomingpodcast@gmail.com. So here are Destiny's vows. I'll read an excerpt from them. Vows to myself. Wow, you are absolutely amazing. I mean, I have literally never met someone as amazing as you. You are literally everything that I hoped and prayed for. You're so woman that Whitney and Shaka made the song an inspiration of you. Love is your name because it radiates through you like a star being cracked open. Your light is so bright that even a blind man can absolutely see that your smile was specifically crafted by God. I mean, there was no rush when God created your smile, sis. Your eyes, nose, skin. Wow, your skin is popping. Who knew melanin could look so magical, like making a wish during a shooting star? Knowing, believing that it would become manifest. Your skin is a manifestation of magic. Even the elite magicians couldn't fathom, grasp. Woman, you are spirit-filled, whole, complete by God, anchored in words, God's words, promises, walking by faith. In faith you move, in faith you see, in faith you hear. You hear yourself clearly because you listen. Oh, how you listen, not just to self or to spirit, but to those you love. You care deep, deep as ocean's core, finding ways to break the barriers of that wall because nothing can limit your love from crashing through, tearing down walls meant to protect heartbeats, to protect beats from breaking, crumbling back to pieces. You pick them up to help bring them back to life, not to fix, but because life has broken yours consistently, and you know what it feels like not to be loved or heard, seen, protected, or respected, chosen. Sometimes people forgot to choose you, so you know, your heart knows. But I vow to always love you with my mind, body, and soul. I vow to protect your nose with firm boundaries. I vow to you that I will listen to you clearly, vividly, and actively. I vow to you to always speak life, not just over you, but for life and throughout life. I vow not to be so hard on you. It's okay to not be okay, or to make mistakes, or to not be where you thought or expected yourself to be. It's okay to not be perfect. That doesn't make you unlovable or evil or even less valuable, because you are absolutely valued, treasured, validated, anointed, chosen, safe, whole, loved, and enough by God. Continue trusting and growing and evolving in God, sis. As we go on this journey, I vow to go deeper with you, allowing Holy Spirit to speak and reveal truth in divine moments and times. I'm so excited for you. As we continue forward and up, I can actually see where God is taking you. And man, oh man, it's a beautiful sight. I love you. Destiny, Dion Goss. Yes, Destiny. Destiny, you wrote that poem. We felt it, and we are lifted by it. Thank you so much for that heartfelt message. And it is right on time for our theme on today. Today, actually, I am answering your relationship questions. So you all write to me about suggested topics, and we have received a number of requests to answer specific issues and challenges that have come up around relationships. And I did not want to answer these questions by myself. And so I have another expert with me on today, Stevon Lewis. Stevon is a licensed marriage and family therapist, speaker, and corporate consultant. In his private practice, he specializes in working with adults struggling with imposter syndrome. He has been a featured expert for various major television and media platforms, including the Oprah Winfrey Network, Bustle Magazine, Thrive Global, and Entrepreneur Magazine. Stevon, over a decade ago, was my student at California State University, Long Beach, and now he is one of the leaders in the field. I am so proud and excited for him to join us. And so welcome, Stevon.
Thank you for having me. I am really excited to be here. This is going to be fun.
Yes, it is. So let's get started. Well, actually, before we start, let me ask you, Stevon, what is helping you to manage, cope, navigate, survive during this pandemic?
Ooh, that is an awesome question. So for me, my go-to self-care activity is cycling. I love to get out
Mm.
on the bike and get out on the road and pedal. It's something I can do by myself in a socially distanced way, and it's fun and restorative for me. So that is like my thing. If I miss that on a weekend, I feel it the next week that I'm not kind of as restored and as refreshed as I would like to be.
Yeah.
But that's my really good go-to. I like to get out and cycle some miles, 30, 40 miles or whatnot.
Oh, wow. You for real. That's
Yeah,
that's
yeah, I'm
some
a
real
spandex and
real
everything.
deal.
I'm legit out there. I probably shouldn't be, but I'm in it anyway.
That's great because we know one of the things we've talked about on the show is how we often hold stress in our bodies. And so our healing and wellness is not just a mental exercise, but also working it out, right, in
Yep.
the body. So that is great to hear. All right, so let's start with our first question. Should a person in a new relationship share past traumas or past abusive relationship details with their new partner? So, what are your thoughts, Stevon?
So it's a twofold, I guess, kind of twofold answer for me.
Mm-hmm.
That part of it is when we're kind of recovering from a toxic relationship, and this one was traumatic, and it
Mm-hmm.
sounds like it was a marriage. Not sure how long, that lasted. We definitely need to kind of do our own work to heal from that sort of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
especially when traumas are involved. I know you work more with trauma than I do, but
Mm-hmm.
it's an experience that we probably didn't want to have to endure. And now we're
Mm-hmm.
also stuck with kind of carrying around. And so then, that follows us places, I think, in terms because it has an impact on who we are, how we see the world, and how we navigate. And so then, being able to kind of make sure that we are processed through and dealt with that in a way that we allow ourselves to present our whole selves, I guess, to a new relationship or in a new relationship. And so that could be kind of, some work that needs to happen. Hopefully, this person has gotten to some of that stuff to be able to kind of heal from that experience. The other part is, I guess, that I think is about the sharing of past traumas and stuff that impacts us. So I am a huge proponent, kind of, when I work with couples about being open and transparent. And so if it's a new relationship, I think, I guess I put some caveats around that in the sense that uh, I don't know that we divulge all that is our past or histories on the very first date or very early in the relationship. I am a firm believer that people have to kind of graduate to that level because if
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be vulnerable, I got to know or have some confidence that you're going to be a good steward of that information about me, right? That you'll be protective with it. And I guess like the analogy I would use is if I'm buying a car, if I first get to the dealership and the first thing that they ask me is, well, how much money do I have? Or they want to run a credit check before I've even looked at a car and found one, I'd be a little bit leery of that, and I wouldn't be prepared to tell them. But at some point, I would think that I got to expect I'm going to have to share, how much money I make, or what my credit score is, so that the dealership can make an assessment about whether or
Mm-hmm.
not they can kind of give me a car. And so I think the same kind of applies with a relationship. That at some point you're going to have to share some things because it may not just only be impacting you, but also the person that you're going to be in relationship with. And I think that people have a right to know what they are signing up for and what they're agreeing to, and that should be done kind of, I guess, sooner rather than later, but not so soon that you're uncomfortable and the person hasn't proven that they are going to be a good steward of that information.
Such important points, and I appreciate you raising them. One is that piece about taking time for our healing, because, a broken heart, it really can disrupt so much of everything and also can cause us to lose confidence and clarity. And so taking that time for restoration can really be important. And I also know that with trauma, especially if it was a relationship issue, that a part of the healing can also happen within relationship. So it's not that, oh, I would say like, oh, I'm all done, like I'm finished, I'm perfect, I don't, have any wounds or scars left, but that there is an internal process that we don't want to skip and only focus on replacing it or getting someone else to be connected to, but for us really taking time for our own wellness and refilling of that well that has been drained in those abusive relationships. Another piece I would add is when I am hesitant to share my story in general, it's often important to think about why. And I'm not even saying in a romantic relationship, but a lot of us carry secrets, and sometimes we're carrying secrets because the shame is still very much alive. So if my thought is, I don't want people to know because I'm embarrassed and I'm fearful people will think less of me because a part of me thinks less of me, then that can also be an indicator of some additional healing work for me to, whether with romantic partner, friend, family member, whoever, for me to get to a place where I can shatter the silence and the shame, because many of us are locked in secrets, and the secret is being reinforced by our ideas about ourselves. And then sometimes those secrets are reinforced because of being protective of the people who hurt us and not wanting people to think badly about them. So it's really important to look at what are the ideas that I have bought into that are keeping me silent, separate from who it is I'm disclosing to. So once we work through my internal healing and my barriers that are keeping me silent or making me have a secret, then when we actually get to the idea of a relationship, I would definitely agree with you, Stevon, that disclosure and sharing is important and pacing is also important. So for me, on a first date, I wouldn't give someone like all of your wounds. One, you don't know what that person is carrying. Not only, can they handle what you're sharing, but that could be triggering for them if they also are a trauma survivor. So when people kind of show up for coffee or for a movie, or in COVID, people are doing like online dates, whatever that is, or talking on the phone, there's a certain level of expectation that is there in terms of the depth of the sharing. And so, to is we reveal ourselves over time. And I know I've worked with some people in the past who have said, well, that's a part of my identity, and I'm not going to be ashamed or I'm not going to be silent. And I feel you on that, on not being shamed and silenced. And I also think it's important to be mindful of the person I'm speaking to, right? Not only what is it going to feel like for me if they're not in a space to receive it, because sometimes it's a setup for disappointment that we're wanting people to respond in a particular way, and they may not be prepared or equipped to give you that response, or just stunned about what to do with that. And the other piece is I would like to remind survivors that our traumas are a part of our story, but it's not the fullness of my identity. And so sometimes when we're really in a hurt place, we can present it such that people are meeting our wounds before they meet us, right? So, yes, to share and to not stay in a place of shame. But as Stevon was saying, to do that over some time, to give their opportunity for you all to get to know each other and share more and more of yourselves as time goes on. But I want you to know, trauma survivors who are listening, that it is definitely possible to have healthy relationships after that. And that's one of the beneficial things of group therapy is often you get to hear other survivors who are at different stages who can then tell you about their experience now being in new relationships where they are treated better, where they feel better, that are really healing. So, great question. And I think that will be one that many people who are listening can connect with. All right. So, the next question is I would want you to address the issue of lost love or how to be okay with someone not loving you back. I have only loved once in my life. The person fell out of love with me. I am the one that can't let go. I can't stop thinking about it. I can't stop caring. I can't stop wondering how things are with this person. I keep having this hope that everything will be all right again between us. Even though we have had this conversation earlier this year, and this person preferred I don't text too much. I can't help how I feel. I can't bring myself to love someone else, or rather, I haven't seen someone worthy. Every day I pray for strength to heal completely from this kind of love, but everything remains in me of our time together. Every song, I think of a lot of moments we had, and I cry a lot about us. I know I need to let go and accept what we have become, but I don't know how because this heart of mine is still so much in love. Please help me. All right, Stevon, what do you say?
So there's a lot going on here.
Yes.
So for I mean I'm assuming your audience is pretty familiar about kind of maybe the therapies or styles of therapies. I know that we kind of practice a style of therapy, or part of the work we do, or the way we work with clients is around cognitive behavioral therapy or rational emotive behavior therapy, which is a fancy way of saying that we believe what we think impacts how we feel, and that
Mm-hmm.
impacts our behavior or what we do. So part of what I'm listening for when I work with people is a lot is contained in language. I am a big proponent of words being intentional, and that what we say is communicating a message, and
Mm-hmm.
what we don't say communicates a message. So in this, like some of the language that I kind of attach to are, falling out of love with me, or I can't let go.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think what that says on a surface level is that I'm stuck here, right? I am
Mm-hmm.
still in this place with this person, and it sounds like this person may have moved on. And I think part of the difficulty is that the underlying message, or the meta message, as kind of Deborah Tannen calls it, is that we've decided, or we have a false narrative that we've adopted, that this was the person for us. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's a little bit more difficult to let go of if we've told ourselves this is who is for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that it's going to be a lot tougher to kind of move forward or move away from this relationship if we've determined that this is the person I'm supposed to spend my life with. So what we're getting in reality, the fact that this relationship isn't continuing, isn't really what's supposed to be happening, right? There's that demand there. And so part of it is that there's this amount of time that's being spent focused on what I've lost, right? What's not supposed to happen. So I'm in a place of where I'm frustrated or upset about not being in this relationship, because this was supposed to work, and it's not, and it's harder to move past that. So I think that it's important for us to kind of evaluate whether the narrative we've adopted about a situation or a relationship or another person is actually accurate, right? That it is based in reality. Part of me believes that if this is the relationship for you, then that's how that person, the universe, or God, or someone would have communicated that
Mm-hmm.
to them as well. Hopefully, if it's
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be, and that our heart can't kind of move on, or we're stuck in this place because we're spending a lot of time focused on this past relationship, or what was supposed to be and what we didn't get. And I think that we aren't allowing maybe for other things, kind of like our field of vision is being shielded, and we
Mm-hmm.
aren't seeing maybe other opportunities for relationships that could be healthy or could be better. I think part of that narrative suggests that this was the relationship for you, and also that nothing else that comes after it will be as good. And unless we can kind of forecast and tell the future, then I don't know that to be true. And it's hard for me to accept that, right? That there couldn't be another relationship with a person out there that may be 10 times better than what this one was. But if we stay kind of where we are, we may never experience that. And so I have a belief that we, kind of grow. We can't grow from a place of comfort. And while this is uncomfortable, also it might be an opportunity for us to experience something new and better.
So important. This, the points that you raised are critical in terms of our words matter, including not just the words we speak to other people, but the words we speak to ourselves, right? The story that I tell myself that I can't, right? That I can't move on. I can't have anything else. This is all I will ever have. And I can't let go, right? So being careful about language. And speaking of language, what stands out to me as I'm reading is the question in the first sentence, how to be okay with someone not loving you back. And so, what that raises for me is, what is it in your life experience before this relationship that made someone not loving you back attractive and or acceptable? What is familiar in your life experience about pursuing people who are not showing up for you, loving people who are not returning love for you, and really needing to heal the original wound? And so, did you observe that in your parents growing up? Was that your relationship with your parents or between them? Of seeing demonstrated for you, this is what love looks like, you know, showing up for people who demonstrate to you, that tell you they don't care about you. And sometimes those are the messages that we have received directly or indirectly. And so a part of the healing is going to be, I am no longer going to pursue people who do not see my value or my worth, or see it but are not interested in it. That in a lot of ways that becomes a part of the criteria, that if you don't see or don't appreciate who I am or who I could be for you, then immediately that eliminates you from consideration, which I think is another important part of this, which is respecting the boundaries of the other person. So this other person has requested that you don't text them and then you have their too much. Um, and so you want to really hear this, that someone has told me they don't love me, and please don't text them too much. So it's really critical for us to think about not just our feelings, but to really hear what another person is saying, right? To really take that in, because what I have found is often we fall in love with potential of who a person could be to us, or what this relationship could look like if they loved me. But the reality is, what they are speaking and continuing with their behavior is that they're not there for it for whatever reason. They're not in it. They're not with me. And so it's really important that we honor people's boundaries, as I start to even think about stalking or harassment, or simply making people uncomfortable who have said, I would prefer that this not continue, right? And, we want to really hear that louder than our own desire, because it's one thing for me to say, I want you. And then if you say, you don't want me, but I ignore that and keep saying, but I want you, right? Then that can lead us to engaging in some problem behaviors as it relates to the other person. But then also internally, I was agreeing with what Stevon said about cutting off the opportunity for actual love, for mutual reciprocal love. And so you wouldn't really know if anyone is quote unquote worthy, or if anyone else would be able to treat you well, because this person has been the center of your life, or the center of your focus, your imagination, your fantasy, your dreams and your prayers. And so I would encourage you, since you mentioned being a person of prayer, to not only pray about getting healed from, you called it this kind of loving someone who doesn't love me, but I would begin to, in your prayers, ask God to help you to open you up to new experiences, to open you up to new vision, new sight, to be willing to create some new memories. Because right now you're replaying old memories. And it also, I would encourage you, when you're replaying the memories, to try to remember the good and the bad. Because sometimes we have painted over the ways in which we weren't treated well or the ways in which we were dismissed, and we're just clinging to the great moments. And so when you reflect on a relationship, we don't want to fall into the trap of either idealizing it and saying everything was perfect, or saying like the whole thing was garbage. But like, can I remember the other parts of it, the other moments of it, which will help me to put it more in perspective instead of the picture that in some ways I have created. And so my hope for you, and my hope for any of us who are listening on today, is that you would become uncomfortable being in pursuit of someone who does not love you, that it will become uncomfortable for you, unacceptable for you. And from that space, your heart will be freed, because it is no longer uh, serving you. It is no longer honoring you to continue to, in some ways, participate in a setup for disappointment. And so I wonder if you can, where you are right now, just speak out loud to yourself. He does not choose me, but I choose me. Right? He did not choose me, but I choose me. And again, he did not choose me, or she did not choose me. They did not choose me, but I choose me. And I know it is a process, but it is definitely possible. And I know that we have many listeners on who have been in that place that you're in. So I want you to know you are not by yourself in terms of having a broken heart and not being able to imagine anything beyond this moment. But there is life beyond this moment. All right. So the next question, um, let's see here. I wondered if you could consider doing an episode on rebuilding trust after it's been broken and being able to move forward. My partner broke my trust after about 6 months ago, when he flirted with a woman he had previously casually dated. I found out the same day through her telling me about it. Since then, he has done a huge amount of work to rebuild my trust and has shown me that he is ready to be the partner I need and not let that happen again. He has acknowledged how much pain this caused me and that it was completely wrong. However, I find myself constantly thinking about the other woman, and I get worried about her, she, and he possibly doing that again. Would you address letting go and moving forward in a healthy way after trust has been broken, and how to rebuild the relationship? All right. So what do you say, Stevon?
This is a good one. Trust is a difficult thing to kind of restore. It is easy to break or get rid of. So it is one of those things that can be easily lost and a little bit more difficult to kind of reestablish. Um, there's a few things in here that kind of, I guess, jumped out for me. That there's a part of where it sounds like uh, her partner has done what needed
Mm-hmm.
to happen to kind of restore trust. So it sounds like they've done some things to show up in a way that she is wanting them to show up, and to be there for them and communicate to her that they are ready to be the partner that she believes they can be and deserves them to be, and also wants them to be. The thing that really jumped out for me is I think sometimes this happens with trust, right? Is that like the person who is the transgressor needs to do some things to kind of rectify or make amends for breaking trust, and then there's a point at which the person who is the aggrieved, I guess, is needs to get to a place of where they are okay to start moving forward. It sounds like she's saying that she's gotten to that place, but part of me is kind of not sure about that, and here's why. It sounds like she's saying that he's done a lot of work, and she sees that, and she's super proud of it. And the part that's causing her issue is she's saying she doesn't trust this other person, and so that like there's this other woman, and she's getting worried that she'll get him to do that again. So for me, again with language, I have an issue there. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
because it doesn't hold him accountable for the behavior that he engaged in.
You
It
better come
says
on, Stevon. Yes, indeed.
she's saying that this other woman has power or sway over him to do something and control him to make him engage in a behavior that he didn't want to be a part of. I don't know that I agree there, right? She's monitoring this other woman, but it doesn't sound like she's at a place where she really does trust him, right? Like maybe he has done a lot, but also he hasn't done what she needs in order to trust him anymore. I guess the way I think of it is I don't like licorice, right? The black licorice. I do not like the taste of it. I don't know that someone could get me to eat that because I do not want it.
That's
However,
good.
it sounds like based on this statement that there is something someone could do to get me to eat that. And I think that that's where the part is getting. I guess for me, that's resonating with me that I'm having a real issue for. And it's okay if she's not at a place of where she's ready to trust him again or trust her partner again. That he's not, maybe he has worked and done a lot, and he's tried to do that. But also, if it's not enough, then that's okay. And maybe it's in stages that he's done some stuff, and then we feel comfortable. And if she doesn't feel comfortable later in the relationship, we revisit that and talk about that and say, hey, I'm not comfortable. Here's why, and we discuss more of that. But I don't think that it's healthy for her to kind of monitor this other person that's not in their relationship, trying to police them and their behavior and wondering, and I don't want to say stalking, but obviously spending time monitoring what they're doing, or if they're going to have some power to convince him to do something that he may not have wanted to do or be a part of. I think it's more of a thing about having the conversation about what 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 does trust look like for her, and how to get that reestablished, and if her partner has actually done that. And if not, then the conversation should go to how he can, I guess, get around to reestablishing trust, and what that will look like for him, and get him to have buy-in about wanting to do those things.
Hmm. So important. One, as you name, her noting that he has done work to rebuild the trust. And that's important because sometimes people want to like give an apology and be done, right? Like I said, I'm sorry. Like, so get over it. Don't bring it up again. But as you mentioned, to rebuild trust takes work and takes time. So it does say something, it is significant that he has been doing that. um, it is challenging that the way she found out about it was through this woman telling her. And so then that is an additional breaking of trust of not only did you do this behavior, but then you have this other person coming to me kind of putting it in my face of like, oh, you think you're with this person, but this is what they're saying to me. um, but then that issue of taking responsibility, right? Because she said that he had flirted with this woman, but then she's concerned that the woman will cause him to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad you raised that because it is very important, especially when we start talking about gender roles. Is a lot of times the way people language things is that they are just these like terrible women who are just out seducing people. And it's like, oh my goodness, how did this happen? And that there has to be responsibility and accountability for choices and for action. And so it is possible. And, so, in this particular situation, it was, about them flirting with someone they used to date. But there are also people who are trying to heal relationships or marriages after infidelity, and not only emotional or flirting, but actual physical, sexual infidelity. And so, knowing that that process also involves work to rebuild trust, that an apology is insufficient, and that the relationship will change in a lot of ways, that because that trust has been broken, people will often require more. One, they may have a lot of questions, so they can kind of feel like they have clarity about what happened. And then the person in the aftermath may face more questions in terms of like their going and coming or what they're doing. And so when someone is really in a place of remorse, then they get that, right? It may be hard to like feel like, you're reaping the benefits, or you're dealing with the consequences of your behavior, but you get that like you have created this dynamic, so you have to do the work. Versus when someone isn't really sorry and gets an attitude with the person who they have harmed, right? So we want to be mindful of whatever the level of the relationship or whatever the specific action is that broke the trust, to continue trying to communicate and knowing it is a process and a journey, and that it will not be easy, and it is possible. And so it's important to look at that. And then, there's the couple part of healing the relationship, but then there's also the individual part, the interior part, in terms of if your confidence was broken, if you're ashamed or embarrassed, if you're humiliated, right? Like all of those things, needing to heal those wounds as well as the relationship wounds. So thank you for that one. Let's see, I think we'll try to take about two more. I just left an abusive marriage that was also narcissistic, and I just met this amazing person who now says they are polyamorous. Communication and vulnerability with this person is amazing, but this relationship is causing me to have triggers and feel insecure. What should I do? Yeah.
So I think this is I think Spirit kind of coined this, or said it as like consensual non-monogamy or polyamory. But yeah, it sounds like they were in a marriage before that was sounds like it was a bit toxic. If the person, I don't know, diagnosed, but maybe exhibited some narcissistic behaviors, and was kind of abusive. And I don't know if that was physical or emotional or psychological, verbal, but any abuse is going to be hurtful and damaging. And so I think that trying to heal from that is really important. And moving into a new space where it sounds like maybe this new person is wonderful and they've had some good times, and also they are pushing maybe the boundaries that this other person is used to, and that might feel uncomfortable and feel a lot different. And if we're coming from a place of where we've been, felt unsafe in that relationship before, or in an unsafe space, something new and unfamiliar might also feel unsafe. So I don't want kind of the person to think that they, because this person is great, this new individual is amazing, that they also need to put aside some of those maybe gut feelings, or the triggers that are happening. That they need to kind of sit with that and understand where that stuff is coming from. Recognize that you've come out of something that was toxic and possibly traumatic, and that as a result of that, maybe you felt unsafe at times, and that this new relationship, while it is fantastic and giving you what you need, is also stretching you in a way that maybe is making you uncomfortable. And for you to be able to talk about that stuff with the other individual. I also don't think that if trying to push through things that aren't as comfortable for us, if we're not ready, it's important to kind of discuss that and place whatever boundaries you need. Trying to, I think, reestablish or kind of identify safety again in a new relationship and be accepted and create that trust is difficult after coming out of something that is toxic. So I'm, also kind of being, I guess, cautioning against getting to a place of where you're advancing faster than you're okay or comfortable with. To try to maybe please or be there for another person. Maybe that's something that happened in this previous relationship. If the person was truly kind of narcissistic, that you had to kind of give up your autonomy or your needs and kind of cater to the other person to make them okay. And I don't want you to kind of enter into a new relationship on that same foundation, right? That you're starting from a place of where the other person gets to present as is, and you have to be okay with everything. I don't want you neglecting kind of your own needs and not exercising agency in the relationship. So it would be important for you to have those conversations. And if this person is as amazing as you say, and you guys are having that connection, then I think communication about this stuff would be accepted and appropriate. And if you're getting something different, then I wouldn't take ownership over that. But you have a right to kind of establish boundaries again that make you feel comfortable and safe, and not to have to neglect your own needs. So it's a difficult thing to move out of something that wasn't good and wasn't beneficial for us, and trying to move forward into something that is, and then that not also feel familiar, right? Like I think we might get used to when we come out of places where environments were toxic, we get used to that toxicity, and it's sometimes hard to let go of that stuff. So that if something is okay or different from what we have, it's a little bit more difficult for us to be okay or to try to find or establish comfort. But it sounds like she's trying to stay connected, or they're trying to stay connected and be involved in the space, and just wanting to know how to be able to move forward with that. So the feelings of insecurity, I don't think are really about you, right? Like that, I mean, I guess you are kind of experiencing that for sure, but it may not be indicative or define that you have the problem, right? That maybe being in this new space and in this new relationship isn't one that is you defined as safe or okay for you yet. And the insecurity might be you wanting to make that happen and faster, or before you're ready to do so. And I think kind of doing some of your own work to find out what you need and being able to voice that stuff so that things are happening in an equitable way is going to be really important.
I would agree with all that you said. So important. And for those who didn't catch it or had not heard the term before, in terms of polyamorous, it's being in an intimate relationship with more than one person. And there is informed consent of all partners that are involved. And so it's consensual and ethical, responsible, non-monogamy relationship with more than one partner. And so, as Stevon was sharing, if you are coming out of an abusive marriage, and particularly if you were married to a narcissist, often in those marriages, you lost your voice, right? That what you wanted, what you needed wasn't important. And so, in order for you to really be able to consent to something, it requires a clarity about what you really want, what you really need, and being able to communicate that without feeling pressured or triggered. And so I'm highlighting, as Stevon was naming earlier, the importance of language that you wrote. I just left an abusive marriage. So to me, that sounds like it was very recent. And so I would just encourage caution so that you can take the time to reclaim your voice, to get clarity about what you want, what you need, what you desire in a relationship. And so, as you mentioned, the communication and vulnerability with this person is important. And it is very critical to be able to have communication and vulnerability. But whenever we are feeling triggered or insecure, there's, two components happening. One is it just relating with someone in general is triggering because I have come out of a relationship, but specifically you named that this part of it is triggering and creates insecurity for you. So I would encourage you not to ignore that, not to dismiss it. That sometimes we are so glad to be treated better that we can ignore the reaction that we are having within ourselves. And so, yes, acknowledge what feels good and what feels right, but also do not dismiss the response that you are having. Don't just chalk it up to, oh, it's because I'm a trauma survivor. That if something feels uncomfortable to me, doesn't feel aligned with me, is creating distress for me, then when you talked about that communication, you want to be able to not only talk about that with them, but really explore that within yourself, because it is a lot to heal. And especially if we are trying to heal in a relationship that is also creating some concern, distress, or insecurity. And so thank you so much for that question. For our last one, I think I'm going to read two of them together because, and Stevon will catch it, there's similar themes that are happening here. So let's see here, and maybe I'll try to abbreviate. A few months ago, I was ghosted by a guy I started dating, and that led to a lot of heartache and sadness. And as I tried to work through it, it was really difficult. I just couldn't seem to let go. However, your podcasts were inspiring and helped me focus on growing myself, and that gave me something to look forward to on my walk. But he reached out to wish me a happy birthday 2 months after he ghosted me, and I was quite frustrated and went to his house and confronted him about the way he treated me and how, since his solution to things was to run away, he never knew what pain he caused people. When he came around the corner, I could immediately see a wall go up, and I didn't know how much I was going to get through to him. He also teared up as I started recalling how he decided to leave things, but shortly he got it under control, since I guess he didn't feel that he could express his emotions, even though I always encouraged it when we were dating. I was wondering if you could do a podcast on something related to toxic masculinity, since I feel like in Western culture it is something that is prevalent and often not addressed. But to finish my story, after I confronted him about it, I really felt like I was able to come home to myself a little more. I felt happier and lighter and more connected to me instead of having these what ifs and the fantasy about the past holding me back. I also am religious and had prayed that day before he even had messaged me that I could start to forgive him. I think that also helped take a burden off my shoulders. I would love to hear an episode about emotionally unavailable people, whether temporarily or chronically. I feel deep in my gut that this person is the one, if that exists. We've had amazing chemistry since we met a year ago and have become extremely close. It feels like we're in love, but it's only been indirectly, cryptically communicated. We've had bursts of intimacy throughout the past year, but are still waiting for the timing to be right. But when will it ever be right? Anyway, I would love to hear your thoughts. I believe he is emotionally unavailable temporarily because he had a really bad breakup 4 years ago and has been filling himself with hookups ever since. I think he's scared of love. All right. So,
Ooh-wee.
Stevon, we had toxic masculinity,
Oh yeah.
emotionally unavailable. What say you to all of
Ooh.
this?
These fellas getting beat up over here. Huh? Not their
Oh,
behavior is not showing up in the way that people are wanting it. So
mhm,
I guess to kind of start with the area of toxic masculinity. Men are allowed to kind of engage in things or in behavior that really is hurtful to others and isn't really kind of uplifting for themselves in a way. And it's a lot of the stereotypes that we have about men. Some of the language around boys will just be boys, or allowing promiscuity to be okay for men and not for women. Some of that double standard. And so in this one that's ghosted, I guess from like kind of the theme I'm hearing for both of these a little bit is around closure. That for us, I think as human beings, we like to make sense of the world. We like
mhm,
things to align and be able to connect the dots. And when that doesn't happen, it leaves a lot to question. And uncertainty is not a comfortable place or space to be in. So it sounds like when the guy ghosted this individual, that it led to hurt, and I'm reading in there some anger, which
Mhm.
is appropriate, right? Like because you know it seemed or felt like the relationship was headed in a really good direction, and that they were kind of on the same page about it, and then out of nowhere this person just stops, and so for that, for me, I'm thinking that would be very confusing. And so I would want to know why. And depending on kind of where I am in my own kind of perception of self, and the work I've done on me and my own level of confidence, I might tend to question, if it were something I did that made that happen. I also don't know the history of other relationships. If this is a behavior that's happened before, when you've been ghosted, that could also impact that. I know that I work with individuals that struggle with imposter syndrome, so they have a lot of self doubt. So part of me, as I'm reading it, while I don't think that the guy, he definitely could have handled that better and didn't need to
Mhm.
ghost the person. And I would hope that if you don't want to be in a relationship with someone, that you can have that conversation with that individual if it's safe to do
Mhm.
so. Again, just to allow people to have their own level of closure. That there's no law, I think, that says that you have to remain in a relationship with someone. People get divorces, people
Mhm.
leave in exit relationships. I'm not saying that's the thing to do. I'm also saying that staying in a relationship that you don't want to be in or be a part of is also not the thing to do. But part of it that came out was that she mentioned he was tearful. So that struck me as odd that if he I guess ghosted and didn't want to be a part of the relationship, that tearing up, I don't know if that was, an emotion of sadness or if that was out of anger and frustration that she showed up at his house. But to read into the behavior to say that he absolutely, is a jerk, I don't know that. I would caution against kind of, defining how others' behavior, what that means. I'm a proponent or a huge proponent really of asking people what the behavior that I'm seeing means, right? So that if he's a person that say he didn't feel as though he could be the person that she needed, then maybe there's some shame or guilt there, and
Mhm.
that he might decide, again incorrectly, that maybe they would be better off without him, or that maybe something in her triggered something with him. That doesn't mean that his behavior was okay.
Mhm.
That's an explanation, but it's not saying it's excusing his behavior. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just saying that he might be also dealing with some things that it wasn't really about you, and it might be about himself. So I don't want
Mhm.
us to start to take ownership over the behavior of others, to say that what we're seeing from them is a direct result of who we are or what we've
Mhm.
done. In terms of the chemistry and kind of explaining away the bad breakup, and kind of saying that I think he's scared of love, that is a possibility. That is one interpretation. It could be a thing of where that would fall into the toxic masculinity kind of bucket of where I've been hurt by a woman, and now, or in a past relationship, and now I want to go out and use women or use relationships or romance in a way that maybe I am also hurting others because I felt so much pain. Also, it could be a thing of where this person just genuinely has made a decision that they don't want to be in a committed long-term relationship. Regardless of how good things are going, and it seems like it makes the most logical sense that the next step would be for us to be committed to one another. This person may not be there anymore. They may have gotten to a place in their life where they don't see being in a committed relationship is for them, and so they are okay or comfortable with having hookups. Um, that's not for us to judge, so to speak, that that's behavior is wrong or inappropriate. What we can do is say that behavior is not something that I want to be a part of, right? And so if that's something you aren't okay with, then you have a right as well to not be in a relationship with the person. And I think I want to also kind of caution against the part of where I heard, or I think you mentioned that the person said this. I think this is the person for me. If that's a thing, again, those narratives that we create about others and about relationships is really important to monitor. That if you made a decision that this is the person for you, I'm hoping that that person has also made a similar decision about you in their life. If
Mhm.
that hasn't happened, then maybe we need to kind of, I guess, reflect back on if that's the person for you per se. And I think Dr. T, you were kind of mentioning some of that earlier in one of the earlier questions about whether or not I choose me, right? And so I
Mhm.
think it's one of those things of where if you determine this, maybe a check in with the other person about why what their behavior is. You're seeing them not commit what that's about, and have them explain it to you for you not to interpret and assign meaning to that, and also for you to say, hey, do you feel that I'm also the one, and what would that look like? And if it fits with what you're wanting in a relationship, by all means, try to see what you guys can establish. But if it's not, then you may have to come to the realization that maybe this isn't the one, or it's not the one for you.
Hmm. Wonderful. A number of really important points and insights. And I would just support that and say for the first person who was ghosted, I'm glad that you were able to work through it. And what I heard you saying in terms of what helped you was doing your internal work and internal healing, needing to be able to communicate or confront, to express your feelings to this person, and then with your spirituality and using your faith to cope. The only caution I would give is about showing up at someone's home. That can lead to all kinds of things, unannounced or uninvited. But I would just also raise for people that sometimes when people have not given you an opportunity to speak, as Stevon was naming, we can feel like there's a lack of closure. So it's one thing when I am waiting for someone to give me answers, and the answers may be something I don't like, or they might not know the answer. They just are out here doing what they're doing. So I would never want to hold up my healing waiting for their answers. But if, on the other hand, there is something that I want to express, that how you treated me was not okay, right? That I want to communicate that was unacceptable, or that was immature, that was disrespectful, that wasn't caring, then you may find some relief in that. And what the first writer shared was that when she was able to speak that to him, there was some relief, some lightness in terms of the burden that emotionally that she had been carrying. In terms of the second person who, talked about that maybe this person is emotionally unavailable because they had a bad breakup 4 years ago. And so now they're filling themselves with hookups. I think, as Stevon says, often we are trying to make meaning of things, and that's a natural part of our human experience. What you want to be careful about is what you want, and I'm guessing from how you're writing, is partnership and not a project. And sometimes we sign up for a project because we say, I'm going to heal this person, right? I'm going to fix them with my love, that they are broken and wounded. And even though they're saying they don't want me, right, I'm not hearing that because I'm thinking, oh, it's not that they like sleeping around, that they're wounded. And so if I just keep loving them, then somehow I'll win them over. So I want, and that's not what you were saying, but if we take that all the way to its full expression, sometimes it can cause us to be in relationship or to be on hold with people who we want something for them they don't want for themselves. So we want to be careful about diagnosing, interpreting, assuming what a person's wound is. It is really, really important as we start to work through that to not lose sight of ourselves. And so I am so appreciative of you all's questions this week, and Stevon, of your responses. And I hope that those were helpful as we continue to think about our healing and the healing of our relationships. And I didn't ask Stevon this ahead of time, but usually we give a homework assignment. And so for those who are in a relationship, whether dating in a relationship or married, can you provide a homework of something people can do to nourish their relationships this week, to improve their intimacy this week? Anything come to mind?
For sure. I guess one thing that sticks out is that sometimes then we're in a relationship, and if it's been long term, things can get a little bit stale, and there's the idea of like who's going to bring the romance, or kind of plan for us to do things. An activity I like is to kind of have people write down on sheets of paper different things that they would like to do, and you can put it in a jar, and you guys choose a day to kind of choose one of those activities. for you to engage in. So that way it's equitable. It's not we're always doing or feeling like we're doing what one person's wanting to do, and I'm having to neglect my own interest or things that are fun for me. That it'll be, kind of a toss up, right? Like it'll be fair for, I put five things in, my partner puts five things in. We're going to do one of those together. I think that would be really good. Also, I think go for it.
No, I love it. Continue.
Oh yeah, and I was going to say the other thing is, I think something that partners can do is to kind of talk about. I think kind of like I do this for individuals, like a gratitude journal. But oftentimes it's good for partners to share with each other what they are appreciating about the relationship. I think oftentimes we can get in the space of when we're in a relationship of sharing what we don't like, and we can kind of have complaints, which I'm not saying we don't have, like, right, our needs need to be met and we need to be able to communicate that to our partners. But I also think we don't also celebrate or oftentimes kind of share, hey, here's what I really appreciated, you did this thing I liked and I wanted to tell you about that, or here's what I really appreciate about our relationship, on just a daily basis. Like it's not anything special that you really did, but it's special to me because of the way you showed up, and I appreciate that. It's really good to hear, even if the person doesn't make a big deal out of it. But I think it feels good. It's just like a job. I think of when, I don't know that I need daily praise from my supervisor, that I am doing a good job, but also I don't want to hear nothing about the job I'm doing.
That's excellent. So enjoying activities together, expressing gratitude for each other. And then I'll say for our single listeners this week, this one of the things that you're hoping a future partner will do for you, if you can do for yourself this week so that your life is not on hold. And I saw one of my good friends on Instagram recently posted a beautiful bouquet of flowers that she bought herself. And so for us to love on ourselves, and I know that is not the same thing as having a companion or a partner, but in the meantime, and even when you're in relationship, you want to continue to have love for yourself. So I am excited about you all and where you are in the journey home and how that shows up in your relationship with yourself and with others. Stevon, let people know how they can follow you either on social media or on your website.
For sure. So I can be found if you Google my name, Stevon Lewis. All my stuff comes up, Stevon, like Steven, but On. My mom got creative.
Love
You
it.
can, my website is stevonlewis.com. So it's really straightforward. And on Instagram, I'm at Stevon Lewis MFT, the letters Mary Francis Thomas at the end. And that's where you can find me. I try probably most active on that platform as opposed to others. And also, I have connections to the other kind of platforms I'm on based on Instagram.
Thank you again for being with us. And for our listeners, I invite your soul to tell your heart, mind, body, and spirit, welcome home.